Welcome to a true spiritual adventure story like the world has never known, with your host, Dr. James Yogadhi Weldon. This is Dr. Jim Weldon, speaking from Boone, North Carolina, Heavenly Mountain, which is a large community here directed towards personal growth, spiritual growth, meditation, yoga. Today we're going to continue our discussion from my book on the topic of living the enlightened life. Pretty deep into this now, several hundred pages into the book, chapter 14. So it's 1994, and I've decided to make a return trip to the retreat center in Ashram in South Fallsburg, New York. I talked in some of the earlier chapters about how my initial teacher, the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, had actually told me to go on to one of his friends to continue learning and continue my spiritual journey, and this was the organization associated with Siddha Yoga, Swami Muktananda, that lineage, Badi Baba, and now the chief spiritual teacher. Her name is Guru Mai Chitvilasananda. I planned this second trip to New York in October 1994. It's actually the 11th anniversary of the passing of Swami Muktananda, and the tradition holds that at the time of the passing of these enlightened beings, their merit, the good things that they've done, is somehow passed on to those that love them. This is a pretty mysterious process. It's understood that the good that they've done is actually distributed by some kind of karmic law to all those that were associated with those traditions. And at the ashram, each anniversary, a special process is done called a Yagna, or a fire ceremony. It's performed in the honor of Swami Muktananda, chanting, singing 24 hours a day. And several days before my departure, I began to understand why it is so important for me to be there at this specific time. I've never seen anything like this before and really had no idea what to expect. But from my early experiences, I had this sense that it would be incredible, not only to be with such a large group of individuals together, but when I actually heard that word for the first time, Yagna, I can only marvel at accuracy of my earlier past visions or insight. And a year earlier, I was told in a dream in the transcendental state, it's called Turiya, between waking, dreaming, and sleeping, in a Sanskrit message. I guess that was because of my skepticism about some of my experiences. I was wondering if they were accurate and true. And the translation was that I was supposed to gain the blessings or propitiate in the favor of a being called Gawri. And this actual celebration is called the Gawri Shankara Yagna. The celebration is designed to gain the blessings of two aspects of divine consciousness. Honestly, except for this intuitive dream that I had a year back, this was the only time in my life that I had actually even heard that name, Gawri. Of course, those of you from India know that. I had no knowledge of it. And as I complete the upcoming trip, I see how everything in my life was working towards the similar or same goal. Out of the thousands of threads of chaos in my life, it seemed as though a beautiful tapestry was appearing, such a beautiful pattern for my life. And I decided I would accept this journey, this cloth, humbly following wherever it would lead. Over the summer, I'd learned more about this aspect of the divine. Gawri is seen as an aspect of the Divine Mother, or Kundalini Shakti, who has brought the whole universe into being. In an ancient stone relief carvings thousands of years ago, Gawri symbolizes a mother giving birth. And Gawri's child is actually the universe. And the fulfillment of the universe is the final realization of God, or the divine, born in each one of us. Shankara is known as Shiva, symbolized as Gawri's husband, and together they are illustrated in a united in an ecstatic embrace. Shankara actually also happens to be the founder of the spiritual tradition that had guided me all these years. Adi Shankara, the first Shankara, lived in the late 7th century AD, and he founded 4 seats of teaching, one in the north, one in the south, one in the east, and one in the west of India. And each seat was headed by a Shankaracharya, a descendant of that tradition. And Maharishi's spiritual teacher, Jagadguru Brahmananda Saraswati, was the Shankaracharya of the North before he passed. And the history of his spiritual teacher master is quite fascinating. Brahmananda Saraswati, he was called. He leaves at home at the early age of 9 to seek spiritual teachers. And many possible teachers he called good beginners are passed by. And he wanders India for 5 years until he meets the right enlightened teacher. 9 years old. And he lives the life of a forest dweller or a monk in seclusion for the majority of his life. A specific seat in northern India actually had remained empty hundreds of years, 300 years, because they could not find a being of sufficient realization to assume that position. Wow. How they would know, I have no idea. But the custodians that had taken care of that center finally decide upon Brahmananda Saraswati as a suitable teacher to take up that seat after all these years. And the story goes that almost for 20 years, they had attempted to persuade him to accept that position of the Shankaracharya, and they would find him somewhere deep in the forest in the north, but every time they would find him, he would move to another location. Every time they would approach him, he wouldn't say anything. After many years, at the age of 72 for him, without asking for his approval, they performed the particular ceremony and made him the Shankaracharya, the head of that lineage in the north. Maharishi, he wasn't known as Maharishi at that time, obviously, comes to Brahmananda as a student and spends 13 years with him. And when he passed away, another one of his students took up that Shankaracharya tradition, and the tradition continues. A few years later, Maharishi, at the instruction of Brahmananda in a vision, when he's traveling around India, when he's at the very tip of southern India, begins teaching his unique technique of transcendental meditation to the world. And when I made a teacher of meditation in 1973, I learned that the Shankaracharyas are a special order of monks called Danya sannyasis. It's very rare, and the danda refers to a staff that they carry. These spiritual wanderers, sannyasin, are monks initiated into a life of self-realization after many years of preparation. Here at the Yagna in New York, many threads of my life seem to be coming together. First is my instruction to honor this aspect of the divine called Gawri. Secondly is Shankara, the source of the tradition of wisdom that I had been connected with. Of course, in this point of my life, I don't remember the details of that past time, but I can tell you just as a peek here, later I began to realize that I was involved back during that time. I had had flashbacks of Tibet, seemed to be indications of my past life, but I didn't really know my relationship with this tradition. And I felt concerned for months after receiving this instruction mysteriously about Gawri from Maharishi in this vision, and I wondered, how could I ever fulfill this command? I have no knowledge about these special ceremonies, worship. Certainly I knew nothing about what I called yajnas. And how could I win the blessings of such a being somehow? And what does it even mean to propitiate a divine energy? Obviously, what we see in the universe right now is only part, and there are different levels of life, seen, unseen, most of them, all of them, and that what we see is like the surface of the ocean, and there's many more deeper levels. So innocently following my heart, I'm drawn to this event like an iron filing to a magnet. And I'm pulled to this yagna because I saw something mysterious and vast, really was the controller of my life. At this point, we will continue on to the next chapter here, chapter 15, and it's entitled, Still the Mystery Deepens. And as usual, there's a poem that I wrote, and it's really a prayer, as I guess most of my poems are. And the poem goes this way. May I each day live my life more for you. You are the only reality. Light my heart like a burning torch. Burn away my ignorance till there is nothing left but you. Oh, let it be. Oh, let it be. Nothing left but thee. Let it be. Let it be. Nothing left but thee. So I'm now on a flight to New York on my way to attend this yagna that I saw in a visionary dream, was told about it. And I really wonder, I'm curious what will come next. Kind of reached the end of my original outline for the book. The writing appears to be over now. At this point, I don't know what else to say. And my life had come full circle. Remembering some bits of my past, including births and deaths, the most important revelation is the closeness with the divine that I was born with. The being that I see in so many ways, which merged with me so many times in meditation, is still a mystery, but that doesn't matter, because I know now that that being will remain a mystery even when it is known. And the story of my life shows me that God is so full, so infinite, there is no end to that journey, even when the divine is lived. Like the stars that fill the night sky outside my window, seat on the plane, the possibilities for life's expansion seem to go on forever. Astronomers say that there are about 100 million trillion stars contained in 100 billion galaxies in the universe. Yet I suspect that the physical universe is actually small compared to the mental and spiritual universes beyond it. So my life and its continual revelations are just a moment in a bigger theater that continues apparently throughout eternity. And I wonder, are the Christs and the Buddhas and the Muhammads and Allahs of these vast universes children in some greater place? The history of great teachers of every culture tells really the same story again and again. The knowledge, the living truth of life comes forth when confusion and darkness reign. And throughout the corners of history, these masters come in greater and lesser forms, lighting the way of truth. As a good friend of mine once said in humor, that job is always open. Surely in this time of world instability, when millions starve and nations perish in a world of plenty, there is need for them to come again. And I arrive in New York, settle into my room, and make my way to the large assembly hall. And there I recognize the monk that I had actually seen. I had actually seen a scene of a yagna happening a few weeks back, and he was there leading this. And he's the head priest at the ashram, leading the yagna. The hall is packed like my vision, and over 12,000 people have come to witness this ceremony. If you ever get a chance to go there, it's a wonderful place. And sitting in the great glass hall for the yagna, I began meditating surrounded by those thousands, and I can see this room even though my eyes are closed. In gratitude, I remember the enlightened ones I felt on the subtle, and the few that I met in my life so far. And to me, they are like open windows, revealing the bright sun that always shines in the limitless spiritual sky beyond. And suddenly a space opens up as I'm sitting there to a higher dimension, high up in the corner of this room. And it's as if a small sun suddenly enters the space, and sparkling radiance floods out into the room. And out of that brilliant light, I start seeing perfected beings. We call them siddhas, the enlightened ones. And they sail into the room one by one, making a graceful arc. Every being is perfect, seated in the full lotus, showering blessings. What gentle smiles they carry. What complete simplicity they manifest. They come without a word. Only the wind of grace moves in my mind. And each raises his hand mysteriously in greeting and beckoning me onward with a wave. Come, come. Whispers in my mind again and again. You know, they speak no words, but I understand there is still more and somewhere to go, something to do, even great mysteries to live. I'm telling you at this point, I had no idea what was coming. No idea. And later, I enter the bookstore at that retreat center, and I actually see some of the photographs of some of these spiritual teachers, masters. I'm not surprised to recognize some of them. This is how it is. The next morning, I meet Dolat again. I don't know if you remember Dolat. Dolat is the elderly man, along with his young grandchild, Gopi, that held my hands and led me through the woods on my first trip to this ashram, when I completely lost all consciousness of my life here. This summer, when I forgot who I was and could only see the divine, could experience the divine. He says, come to India. He says, yes, the time is coming for me to go to India. All these years, a whole lifetime, I've waited to return to that ancient home. So many great spiritual beings have lived there. And of course, when I talk about this, this is Pakistan. This is that whole region in these earlier ages was covered by this wisdom. And 5,000 years ago, you know, a darkness descended. And over the next few days, I sense many more during this yagna. Whenever I think of the enlightened, I feel that they are there. Where can they go? Now that I'm feeling so connected, always it is the same. As they emerge from the infinite without word, they beckon really us all onwards. No matter what your tradition is, please understand. Where they come from, I do not know. But I believe there is a place where they exist, living the abundance, which is the self, the knowledge and experience of God, the divine. And as I approach the fire after the yagna is finished, the fire is winding down again. And I offer into the fire the pages that I've written. And actually, a danda, I sometimes carry. I had a secret danda. I offer that into the fire. It symbolizes the spine of the enlightened and the fire of the life force, the kundalini. And the pages explode in a blaze. And my gift, my little danda, feeds the heavens. That's what we are if we do not live the enlightened mind. We are fodder of time. And outside, actually at the time, a storm is raging the grounds, drenching me back on the way to my room. And like leaves that sweep past me, we are all carried forth by forces we scarcely understand. And I wonder, am I a fool with what I have written? Who will understand these words? I've written these words to leave a record that the reality of the enlightened mind can come and be better understood in the West, and perhaps some in the East. At least me acting as the fool, maybe I'll give others laughter. It is not easy to know sometimes what truth is and what insights are illusions on the path to the enlightened mind. But I do know one thing. I've come to the end of one journey and the beginning of another. Making my way back to my room, I decide that I'll take something of this place with me to remember my journey here. For me, the grounds here are hallowed. Let me carry a shard of it home with me. I feel somehow it may be sometime before I return again. And that was true. Off I go into the darkness towards a stream overflowing its banks. 20 minutes pass in the dark, rainy afternoon, and I find nothing. I'm drenched. Every moment it's getting darker. And I'm driven to do this, and I don't know why. I reach down again and find another piece of wood covered in mud. And I can't see what I have in my hands, but it's enough. So racing back to shelter, I placed what I picked up in a box, mud and all. On the way back in New York on the airplane from the ashram, on my laptop, I complete the end of this first story. Everything is written but the foreword. I'm waiting again for something, but I don't know what it is. Back home, I washed the mud off the package, something I grabbed in the dirt, and I brought from the ashram. I discovered to my astonishment that is perfectly symmetrically shaped piece of wood, a natural bow with a handhold, even slots for a bowstring. This is fantastic. But what does it mean? I realized, first of all, it's true that I am a warrior, really as we all are, fighting our secret battles for our own awakening of divinity. Maybe it means nothing, perhaps everything. Does it matter that I know or do not know? The secret journey within each life goes on and on. And I take this bow as a gift from the ashram and that Muktananda tradition. Apparently, nature left something to show me, again, to be confident that what is happening to me is true and that I must continue my search for completion. I see that the divine is like that for all of us. Almost everything that lies in front of us and behind us is hidden in mystery. So we all settle for things that do not last. I will not wait, because by the time we attain those things, we may forget and lose what is really important in our life to attain. Listen, are you really reading these words, listening to these words fully? Are you listening to my heart speaking to you? Why can't this be your time to live the enlightened mind too? Come on, reach for the goal of the ages. A few mornings later, I awake from a deep sleep, but an extraordinary new vision on a high spiritual dimension. And I find myself now facing this yogi that passed, Swami Muktananda. And together we're floating above the earth with darkness overlooking into each other's eyes with love. I'd only met him really this one time before, but somehow there we are again, and he's passed. And between us, sparks of energy and waves flow. I know something important below is hidden, waiting to be revealed, but I can't see what it is. And I know that it's important. And as I look into his eyes, suddenly they flare like the sun. And I merge into those eyes. We become one being, saturated in that blissful state. Sometime later, I come to that awareness and find myself again facing Muktananda, looking into his eyes. And again, his eyes flare up brilliantly, and we merge into a oneness state. Time ticks by in eternal moments. Then abruptly, a third time, I find myself gazing into his eyes, and his eyes flare, and we merge again. And then a fourth time, it comes again. I find myself looking into his face, and he looks down, and I look at the mystery between us, and I see something below, and what I see is so amazing. My mind is stunned into silence. My mind can't comprehend what it sees and what it means. And before I can react, he looks at me with compassion and tears, and he says, "This world is so hard." Then that body, his body, dissolves into a brilliant shower of light and rushes down upon like fireworks from the heavens. And looking from above the earth into space, I see that shower of light and consciousness exploding across the sky. And in that light, grace is falling as millions of sparkling raindrops of love, blessing the whole earth. The whole earth is somehow touched, being brighter from that grace. And the particles fall towards the earth. Some merge into a stream like a shooting star. And I wonder, what is this? It's something so amazing that again paralyzes my mind. What does this mean? That star, now a bright blue form with radiant spirals down, 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 towards the earth, into a building, into a hall, with a curved ceiling like a half moon, something like opaque, like glass. The structure I see is real, but the space, the building, feel likely made of love. And there, sleeping on the floor, is a young boy, a child. And then I see a blue star passes into the crown of this child as he's sleeping, and I see the face of the child, and then I turn to the right. Before us at the door is another master. I feel that I've waited a long time to visit this place and see this master's face again. Somehow I know this face, and it is absolutely clear and radiant with joy. This master smiles sweetly, and the rain begins to fall. The rain does not touch us, yet somehow it falls through the ceiling of the building and upon this spiritual master. The rain falls harder and harder, pounding the earth, drenching him. The deluge comes, yet he only smiles sweetly. Suddenly I leap up from my seat and race out into the pouring rain. An umbrella is in my hand, and now I'm drenched as well. And as I open the umbrella, covered with spiritual symbols, I place it over his head. Then the young child leaps up and races out into the rain and places an umbrella over my head as well. My mind is frozen by the vision. It goes deeper and deeper. With a shock, I awake from this revelation directly to full consciousness and sit up in my bed in Colorado. It's 4 a.m. in the morning. About me is my mountain home, and I wonder at what it can mean. Something deep has been revealed. My mind staggers at the possibility. Quickly, I shower and shave and begin my morning meditation, but it's futile. I can't escape it. The vision floods my mind. It's as if what I saw has been burned into my awareness. In my memory again, I see Muktananda before me. I merge into his eyes 3 times in brilliant flashes of light. Then he returns to me and says, "This world is so hard." And we look down to see what is hidden between us. Before a young body of a young male who's sleeping peacefully on a thin mattress, all the beauty of the divine is captured. And then Muktananda's form resolves into a streak of brilliance and rises like the sun, soaring across the heaven, and falls on the planet as a shower of glory. Finally, the light forms a perfect blue star, which enters into the crown of this child's head and disappears. The scene changes, and I'm in a clear shelter watching this shower pour upon a spiritual master. I don't know who this is. And I race into the rain with an umbrella, placing it over his head, and look up at the umbrella, and I see that it's Shankara's umbrella, bearing the distinctive red and gold Om symbols with tassels all around. This is the same umbrella that I had seen in a photo over Maharishi's master, the Shankaracharya of the North. Still in this room, someone races up and puts an umbrella, places it over my head. It appears to be this child, and I wonder, is this child Muktananda? Again, showing me that what I saw between us? My mind flashes back to this child's face again and again. With tears of amazement, I realized what I've seen. Over the next few days, I see Muktananda's face over and over again, in activity and in meditation, and the child's face comes again. Like 2 sides of a coin, these faces appear to be connected. I can only wonder later when I read about a blue star that I saw go into the child's head in Muktananda's book, Play of Consciousness. And he says that the finest form of the jiva, the individualized soul, is like a blue star, and that this star is shattered in a burst of brilliance and self-realization. And I wonder, can this reforming of the star and its interest to enter into the crown of the young child show how a self-realized being freely enters the body again? You know, when an enlightened being dies, truly realized, there's nothing that keeps them from merging with the divine in Mahasamadhi. Yet sometimes still something remains. I believe I have experienced the place where such beings go when they pass from this world. In 1976, I was told that at their death, all the merit, the great merit that the enlightened flows to their spiritual family and then to the world. Is this what I saw as Muktananda's energy fell back to earth? What of the star that passed into the child's body? Does this mean that Muktananda is back? One can only wonder about it. So with that tantalizing bit of inspiration, let's end this section and talk about how I was attempting to resolve this. You know, honestly, I was totally perplexed. I was trying to be very careful about what I had experienced. And this was another revelation, honestly, that has taken me many years, even to the last few months, to begin to resolve. So join me again. Thank you very much. And we'll see you again.